What's the purpose behind the marketing plan? You excite, you educate, experience, and engage. Let's do this, right? Let's do this and let's have fun with it too. To my first-time listeners, thank you for joining the show. I appreciate you being here. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Marketing with In-Depth Podcast, where I'm your host, Nathan Webster, and I'm excited to chop it up with you today. Today, for this episode, man, oh man, do we got a special guest for you. But before we get into it, I got the housekeeping. For you first-time listeners, thank you for joining the show from wherever you may be. I hope you enjoy the show. Make sure you go to letstalkmarketingpodcast.com. If you want to reach out to me, I'm at info@nwebsterllc.com. But more information is going to be on the show notes. For my listeners from all over the world, my returning listeners, my loyal crew, thank you for giving me the love, sharing, and following. And for y'all that haven't gone on to Apple, iTunes, I already know I'm still at 21. Yo, I love the number 21. I've been at 21 for a minute, but I've been drinking for a minute. I don't really drink that much, but that's another conversation. That's another topic. But y'all, we need to get our reviews up. We got to get our reviews up because Apple won't think I'm doing anything good if I don't get my reviews up. I need more than 21 reviews. So can you help a brother out? And if so, I can send you a little swag if you want some BU swag. But this is all sponsored by our conference that we're going to have this year, October 3rd and 4th, 2024 at the Vancouver Hilton downtown. So let's get into the show. I have on the show that I'm excited because when I started doing the podcast, it was not what I thought. When I transitioned to marketing and I started getting hit up, can I be on your show? Can I be on your show? Can I be on your show? I'm like, man, I want people that can drop diamonds. I got my regulars that dropping diamonds, but it's always interesting and nice to have a brand new guest to drop some serious diamonds about marketing. So, Greg, welcome to the show.
Nathan, you're so nice to invite me. I love your enthusiasm.
Absolutely. So, y'all, for my listeners out there from all around the world, this is Greg Stuart. I am not going to spend any more time talking. I'm just going to give the mic to him because he has a lot to say. So, without further ado, please, Greg, welcome to the show.
Oh, come on, Nathan. That's never a good idea to turn a microphone over to me and just let me loose. I mean, come on. There's got to be some parameters, some corralling. I think there should be some governance here. We need to think about this a little bit.
Oh, no. Well,
Okay.
Man. The mic is all yours, my friend. It is all yours.
Well, listen, we don't know if people read the show description, but I'll just give a little bit for your listeners. So, listen, again, Greg Stuart, I run a non-profit trade association based out of New York, which represents major marketers, major CMOs. So we work on behalf, like my board chair currently is the CMO of AT&T. The rest of the board includes CMOs from, Visa and General Motors, and, the list goes on and on. And I don't know to what degree your listeners are familiar either with MMA or MMA Global, the actual legal name, but is familiar with MMA. But as a nonprofit, our job is
you got to say it. Come on, Greg. For folks that don't know, come on.
Okay, yeah. Well, here's it. As a nonprofit, our job is to make the world better for marketers. We work for CMOs. It is about raising the stature and gravitas of CMOs. We want them to be better respected within the C-suite of the companies that they operate in. And the thesis around that, the idea behind that, Nathan, is that we think that the profession is not really garnered the respect that we hope it should. And in part, but the way we go at this, we say it's kind of our fault. There are things that we don't know. There are things that we sometimes believe to be true that just aren't so. And the MMA is out to bring a sense of clarity and truth and fact to that. So I don't have anything to sell. I mean, if organizations want to join as members, they can do that. But as a general rule, we don't have anything to sell. We are really here to bring unbiased truth. And what's interesting about that, here's the really sad part about that whole thing, Nathan. we continue to find huge new areas where marketing's impact can be made so much greater if we understand the dynamics or have the insight, the knowledge, the perspective, or a tool sometimes to help us get there. And that's what's crazy. Marketing still, I guess, marketing still has a lot of room for improvement. I don't know. What do you think, Nathan? You agree?
Oh my gosh, I think with this AI stuff too, we're just now scratching the surface, and yeah, God, yes,
100% right. I mean, it's not just right. I mean, AI is only going to kind of highlight more, or maybe it's going to be our savior. I don't know. I don't think that we know yet. But the basic foundation and fundamentals of marketing, like if you were to, I'll give you a small example. We asked. There are three main growth frameworks in the world. A guy named Pete Fader did one from Wharton, a guy, Les Binet and Pete Fields from the long and short of it out of the UK, and then a guy named Byron Sharp wrote a book, How Brands Grow, right? Most marketers don't understand those three basic growth frameworks. So it'd be a little bit like a doctor sort of trying to give medical advice, not having taken a basic course in anatomy. Like that's bad, Nathan. Like we can't operate that way. And one of the challenges is that, MMA believes that there's elements of at least one of those frameworks, I won't say which, that we don't think is actually correct. And so we don't go around and I'm not here to be negative on people. That's not what we do. But we took a step back and said, well, what is better? What does really work? And by the way, the genesis of that project came from the CMO. He was at the time CMO of CBS. He's now the CMO of General Motors. He called me and he goes, Greg, we're looking at this thing. We don't think we got it right. He goes, I think my team and I are just wrong in the way we're looking at it. It was funny. I have a research guy. He says, you're right, you're wrong. and he goes, and I know that because I wrote a paper about this in 2017. And out of that, then we went and built a new growth framework that will help marketers better think through how do they produce growth, which is always should be the objective that they should do for their companies. That's what we do. We sort of come up with these new ways of looking at the world with things, and then we go validate and prove them because we don't have to be right. We have to get to right. There's a difference in that. Right, Nathan?
Ooh. Those are bars. Yes, that's absolutely correct. Yes. And I think too many times, especially with smaller businesses, they feel like they do have to be right rather than it's the process, it's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes smaller marketers, I mean, listen, I launched cars.com a number of years ago, back in the late 90s, kind of .com-ish sort of time period. And I got to know auto dealers. And I'll tell you what surprised me about that was that, sure, we were trying to build cars.com, big national brand. But what was interesting about that is that I actually thought the auto dealers had a better handle on marketing's impact and effectiveness and knew more about what worked than even some of the bigger marketers that I was used to did. Isn't that funny? They had a better handle on what it was. I think partly because it was their own damn money. And, they would watch what happened to, the showroom on a Saturday, Sunday, or whatever whatever their metric was, store visits for them was a big deal. But there's still, it still doesn't mean, though, that they're doing optimal targeting or they understand the underlying strategies that really make marketing a much bigger deal. And like I said, like what we found in this growth framework that we thought ultimately was identified that there were elements of others that weren't right. And you even get in complexity too, Nathan, because we also did a study. We asked senior marketers and mid-level marketers what they thought the growth frameworks that were right. They didn't agree. And I know enough from the research we did that within the same company, they didn't agree. So if we as an industry are not clear how to produce growth, then why would the CEOs or the boards or the rest of the C-suite respect us? That's a problem.
Yeah, I keep trying to tell people, like, we are no longer in the days, and COVID has helped with this, unfortunately, the double-edged sword of COVID. You can no longer fake it till you make it. People have been promoted unmeritedly, and they have no idea what they're doing. So you talking about,
and there's not an expectation. There's not an expectation. There's not a certification. There's not a validation. There's no board certified like in the medical profession. No. I mean, listen, we're doing that big event in Miami. MMA founded that big event in Miami called Possible. Now it's going to be coming up here April 15th, 17th. And last year, I opened the event last year here was my opening statement. I walked on stage and I said, I believe that the marketing profession is no further along than the medical profession was in the mid-1800s when they thought bloodletting was a good idea.
Oh.
And they did. The medical profession was largely predicated on the theory that if we release pressure from the body, that would alleviate ills or prevent future disease. The problem was bloodletting was killing people. In fact, George Washington died from bloodletting.
Oh
So,
my God.
you know,
I
we
did
get
not
these
know
ideas
that.
in our heads and we become really clear and articulate. And most marketers are pretty articulate. You know, we tend to be, I think marketers tend to be verbally good. You know, you're in that camp. But, you know, and so we can convince people, we can make it sound good, but is it really right? Have we really come up with the right thing?
Preach.
And by the way, you want to hear what we found from the growth framework, Nathan? Should I tell you what was the big unlock in there? Okay. Here's what we found. Or here was our thesis. You can, and by the way, most marketers, most major CMOs wouldn't necessarily agree with me on this. So, you know, but that's fine. That's okay. Let's go prove it. Let's go valid. I don't care if I'm right or wrong. I don't care if we get the right.
Okay.
So what we figured out is that there are people who do targeting. And as you know, the business was largely predicated originally on demographic targeting, which is, you know, really silly. I mean, but that was the best we could do. It was the best that media could support. So it's all we had for many decades. Okay.
Yeah.
And then people come up with other targets. There's been behavioral targeting. There's there's retargeting. I mean, there's a lot of different targeting techniques. And at some basic level, you would probably appreciate that, you know, better targeting without too much of a premium on that should produce better results. Okay. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that what really produces the most return on advertising, on effectiveness, is focused on going after those who are actually have a propensity to consider the brand. Mm-hmm. And the thesis of this paper from 2017 was target people who have some predisposition to want to participate in a brand and avoid those who will never buy your damn brand no matter what. Because I think advertisers, I've wondered often as advertising marketers have a fair amount of arrogance. They think, oh, if I advertise enough, I'll convince everybody to love me. I don't think it works that way. I think for whatever reason, there are built-in dynamics. I'll give you an example, okay, to sort of make the point. So you take like Starbucks and Dunkin', okay? My ex-chairman was a CMO of Dunkin' for many years.
Just to let you know, for my listeners out there, you know, on the West Coast, Starbucks is king, but on the East Coast, Dunkin' is king. So we got to
well, if you get around Boston, you could throw a rock in any direction and find a Dunkin'. There's absolutely the case. And I don't know. I mean, listen, Starbucks has made its way across the country here, Nathan, too. We sort of, you know, now I'm in New York, and I'm from Seattle, so yes, what's that? I'm from Seattle, so I watched that whole I was in Seattle when that whole coffee craze started to get going. I remember looking at that in the Bellevue Mall up there and going, watching these little coffee stands. Just I don't know if Starbucks had actually, if Howard Schultz has bought his first one or not. But I remember looking at that and going, coffee on the go in a mall. Mm-hmm. That's probably a really good idea. Okay, so here's the thing. There are some people who will only buy Starbucks and hate Dunkin'. My wife's an example of that. She thinks Dunkin's terrible. I don't know. Whatever. I mean, it's whatever. I don't need to get it. But what she's got in her mind that Starbucks is the end all. There are other people who really only who really only love Dunkin'. Okay, in fact, they did a deprivation study a number of years ago with Starbucks and Dunkin'. They took Starbucks loyals and they made them only they could only go to Dunkin', and they took Dunkin' loyals and they could only go to Starbucks. And the Dunkin' loyals who went to Starbucks said it was like being at the holiday party. It was being at a really nice holiday party of a family they didn't know. That's what Starbucks felt like to them. I thought it was a very funny analysis. Okay.
Interesting.
So, but there are people that we have these built-in things, and you know, maybe you can move some of it, but a lot of you can't. The issue is that just on a basic math dynamics, if you just think it through here for a moment, advertising to those who are very likely never to buy, and likely even would never buy, and putting that money against those who have a propensity to the brand, that are open to it, that are actually okay, and build more volume with them, is what's really going to grow sales. And in fact, here's the catch, Nathan. We happen to know, and I've now done some of the research on this. And I need to go further, but we started a series of experiments the last 2-3 years. we sometimes know that when you advertise against that group who has a propensity to buy, that is a 17x return on performance. Now, here's also what gets interesting. So just think about that. Like, that's an incredible rate of return versus those who are unlikely to buy, okay, if you segment your customers that way. So where that gets really interesting is that it's a group we call the movable middles. It's those who have a propensity to consider the brand. And identifying them has its own tricky techniques, and we've written a bunch of papers on our website that anybody can go take a look at and try to understand. And if you're a brand of some significance, we're happy to talk to, my research team about how we did that and do it. But that's the greatest return. And what we see is campaign performance go up almost double. Entire campaign performance go up double as a result of that. And again, it's just from having a different understanding and think about your business. And most people don't do that. They, like I said, I think most marketers think they can convince somebody to change, and they really can't. It's really about having a propensity, it's target propensity. That is what we believe now to be the single greatest driver of performance. But most marketers, they go, no, I got to target, those who are not customers and bring them into the fold. It's like, yeah, there's some of that going on, but that's not how you're going to, that's not what the concentration of spend should go. You really want to de-emphasize that because you're not going to get the return. There you go.
That ROAS, the return on ad spend, is going to be too hard if you don't put any ads out there. That's a whole nother story. So I really did not do you any great justice and I'm just going to read the last couple of lines of your bio. So for those that are still on, my apology.
I hate bios. I hate my bio.
Greg has been a keynote speaker in 20 plus countries, is a member of the National Speakers Association, as well as co-author What Sticks, Why Most Advertising Fails, and How to Guarantee Your Succeed, and was recognized by Ad Age as the #1 book of the 10 books you should have read and you should read. Industry authorities have awarded Greg for his work as a pioneer in emerging media. In 2006, almost 20 years ago, for those that don't know, we're going to talk about Ad Age once again. Ad Age is the leading marketing publication out there, for those that don't know. In 2006, Ad Age selected Greg as part of the 10 who made their mark. Okay, now we're about to drop a bomb. I think I'm going to put this in the show notes as well. The 10 who made their mark alongside Jay-Z and Chad Hurley of YouTube. And he is a regular contributor to leading publications for his views on the future of marketing. Y'all, in 2006, I just started my nonprofit. That was like, oh my gosh. So to have Greg on the show dropping these diamond bombs is like incredible. And he's in the same sentence of Jay-Z, a multi-billionaire. So this is definitely going to go in the show notes. I already have his LinkedIn, his Twitter. Well, it's not really Twitter anymore, but we're just say that we're going to put his LinkedIn.
X, Nathan, X. We got to call it X. Lindy Yacarino's over there now trying to, make the thing work. So, let's give her, we got to go with a charity. Yeah. Oh, so so listen, bios are embarrassing. So let's ignore that. I'll tell you what the book was though. What Sticks was. Which, and by the way, I do think we did a pretty good. There's part. You write some down. People criticize it. So there's some parts of that I think we would have done a little bit differently. But what the book was based on was the founding of multi-touch attribution. That's really what was going on. Yeah, a guy named Rex Briggs, who's one of the I think the greatest marketing inventor of our times, marketing measurement inventor of our times. I've learned more from Rex about how marketing works than anybody else in the world. Rex had come to me. I was running a different trade association for online advertising, and we were trying to understand how to measure internet in a marketing mix. And most of the time, you would use, media mix modeling. For big marketers, they would use media mix modeling. The problem with media mix modeling is 2 years old, and it doesn't pick up small amounts of media, so we couldn't measure it. So I was trying to help promote internet, on behalf of the IAB at the time. And we needed a new technique, and that was Rex came up with it. I mean, there's a whole story. I won't bore you listeners with the whole story that happened. But then we went on. He created the methodology, showed it to me. I said, this is revolutionary. We then got the industry to validate. We brought in a bunch of PhD experts in the industry to say, yeah, this is legit. What Rex is doing is good and quality and a new way of measuring marketing. And we actually got to a point where we were able to say to marketers that if you want to have the marketing mixes everything to success right? I mean, having the best mix of media is crucial to success and an optimal mix. And MTA was able to show us that. And so it showed us at the time that internet advertising should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 25% of total marketing budgets, which in 2002, 2003 was revolutionary. I mean, nobody believed that. But we were just talking purely economic basis, purely optimization return on the total ad spend. Internet should be 25%. Now I think it's what internet's, I think 50, 60%, which by the way is probably too high. Just by the way, I'm a big proponent of digital. But depending on what you're doing, it could be too.
Well,
there's a chance it could be too high depending on what else you're doing.
We didn't have mobile. We didn't have mobile internet back then.
Yeah, we didn't have mobile. Yeah. We actually got to a point. I did a similar series of studies here when I came to the MMA and looking at what the modern marketing mix was, and we had discovered. I'll give you 2 data points that are interesting. One was that mobile, when done right, and Wendy's was the best purveyor of that. A guy named Brendan Roten had done it there. He was incredible.
Wendy's crushing.
And Wendy's figured out that mobile should be 35% of the mix. But it was because they had figured out a very unique set of targeting that wasn't really, I wouldn't call it sophisticated targeting. It was semi-obvious, but they had so spent into it, and it was so valuable. So using location data was basically the issue. That was so valuable. You know what? Also, we found from those studies too, Nathan. This will then and I bet you your listeners. This is where they're going to write negative reviews now on this one. In those studies, now this is pre-pandemic, before streaming became a big deal. So I want to be fair about that. It did suggest that on a purely return basis, linear broadcast television, untargeted linear television, should be 45 to 65% of a marketing mix.
Okay.
And I bet you, Nathan, I bet not one of your readers would ever say that, everybody, with cord cutting, now with streaming, it definitely has changed. But they would have said with cord cutting and the passiveness of linear television, that, everything's, it's also, but no, I mean, I have no bias. I have no reason to advocate for linear television. I'm just telling the research showed very consistently that broadcast television should be a much bigger part of the mix. It basically said it was dirt cheap. It's basically what it, and nobody thinks that, but that's what was going on. Isn't that crazy? This is another example that we as marketers, we don't test these assumptions. We don't make sure we know. We don't take the responsibility. I think, my opinion, we don't take the responsibility for the amount of money we spend and really be right about it on behalf of our shareholders or bosses or the rest of the employees of the company too. I mean, that's who they're working for.
Yeah. Greg, I got to get you out of here, man. Where can the folks reach you out? If they want to learn more about who you are, what you do, how can they find you?
Sure. Yeah. My email is just greg@mmaglobal.com. So
what? You got to give them your email?
Just reach out to me.
What?
Yeah, that's fine. People can reach out to me. I'm easy enough to find. Yeah. So, or go to MMA Global if you want to see more about the kind of work that we do and trying to really rethink marketing. And even better, I will give a pitch to one thing, Nathan, if you don't mind, if it's okay to you listeners.
Please.
If you really do think marketing can be better, we'd love you to join us in that fight to help do that. If you want to come in here, I probably need you to be a member, but if you want to run an experiment around either the growth frameworks or the stuff we've done on marketing.org, or we have a new thing on AI personalization that I think is the most dramatic impact on marketing performance I have seen in my entire over 3-decade career. It's unbelievable AI. And it means applying concepts like one-hot encoding and K-modes clustering, things we as marketing people don't have any idea what they are. And yet there's a whole new world there. So if you want to figure that out and work with us to go do experiments and come back and to find truth, I'm only looking for truth. I'm fine to be wrong, but we've got to get to right. Then, tell your listeners to reach out. Love to hear from them.
Greg, this has been, man, we got to do this again. We have to do this again.
Yeah. No, you're a good man, Nathan. I listen to your podcast. I like what you're doing. I think it's smart. You're trying to help marketers be better. Same as us.
Yeah. We just, it's funny. We were on the other side of the country, so we got to connect the coasts. All right. Well,
there we go. One of these days.
Yeah. So one of these days. So with that, man, thank you for joining the show. I'm going to be putting your information on the show notes for you listeners out there. Make sure you do go to his site, which is mmaglobal.com. I will have this in the show notes. Make sure you go to it. Check it out. I did not give him a proper introduction, but he is probably the largest, biggest, baddest marketer I have had on the show. And as you can tell, he is a humble, sweet, kind soul. So make sure you reach out to him if you want to learn more in that regards. And with that, you heard it first on Let's Talk Marketing. with In-Depth. So until next time, I wish you nothing but the best. So dream big and Godspeed. What's the purpose behind the marketing plan? You excite, you educate, experience, and engage. Let's do this, right? Let's do this and let's have fun with it too. To my first-time listeners, thank you for joining the show. I appreciate you being here.